Is a presentation of Moonlight Media Works. It is a Stanley Cup Championship edition of the Collins Janus Show as your Carolina Hurricanes, the 2026 Carolina Hurricanes, are Stanley Cup champions for the year of our Lord 2026, 20 years since their inaugural championship in 2006. I'm your host, Collins Janus, but you already knew that. Oh boy. Last we spoke, I was on vacation, rooting on my Hurricanes from an island. Came back, got in time for Game 4, and really, I watched the entire series. I was in the continental United States for the first one. Then I watched games 2, 3, and 4 on an island. Came back for Game 5, or was home for Game 5 and Game 6. And that's all it took for the Carolina Hurricanes to dispatch the John Tortorella, formerly head coach of the Las Vegas Knights, led Las Vegas Knights. John Tortorella, by the way, fired the 2 days after that loss. I'm not entirely sure what the logic there was, and firing Bruce Cassidy and hiring John Tortorella with only like 9 games left in the season, and then going all the way through the postseason, and then going, okay, well, we lost the cup, goodbye. I don't understand the entire logic of that, but we're not about to spend any more time on that than we need to. He's still got to go find his clothes. They're in a hotel in Raleigh somewhere, and I think they might have gotten burned at this point, because the Carolina Hurricanes came all the way 20 years later to win the Stanley Cup. And I have to tell you, we've got a big project coming about the 20 years of these two championships. I've actually started a piece that I'm working on that you guys are going to get to see here in short order, but it's hard because this is now, the day we're recording this is Thursday. As it was happening, it didn't feel real. The day after, I had to keep reminding myself we won the Stanley Cup, because as a fan, I am as original as a fan as you can find. I was born in Connecticut the year after the Hurricanes moved from Hartford to Raleigh. And much like the Hartford Whalers moving to Raleigh, I moved to Raleigh a year after I was born in Connecticut. Became a Carolina Hurricanes fan in diapers, basically. Was going to games there at the RBC Center, as I knew it at the time, which is now Lenovo Center. I had been going to games there all my life from the time I lived outside of Raleigh all the way up until I moved to Charlotte. So probably 13, 14 years, something like that. Or I had moved right before high school. So you get all the way through that period of your life. I was watching games. I was in the area when they won the Cup in 06. I was a child. I was watching at home. My mom made milkshakes. It was a big deal. We were all on the couch in the living room. We were watching this. This was a team we would go to see all the times of the year. I still got the original stick signed, or the original stick with all the printed signatures on it. I have all the original merch. I got the posters, the pucks. I've got it all. As much as my fandom has been kind of spread out amongst this channel and things you've seen, you know I'm a Pats fan, you know I'm a Red Sox guy. Those come from the roots that I have up north and the family I have up north and the teams that's where that comes from. The other half of my family are from North Carolina. And when we moved to North Carolina, the first sporting event I ever went to was a Carolina Hurricanes game. My dad got tickets for years through work and such, and we were going all, throughout the years. And even, it was great up through 06, even as late as 2009. It was still great to be a Hurricanes fan, despite the fact this team, would win a cup and then not make the playoffs and then make a deep playoff run. And that's when it all went sideways. After 2009 began the 10-year window that I like to refer to it as the Dark Ages. And being a Hurricanes fan, and I've talked to plenty of them, I still know plenty of them, I communicate with plenty of them, it was as miserable a thing to see happen because you saw just how good it could be so early on into this franchise's history. They made 2 cup appearances in the first 10 years of being a franchise. Like the 10-year anniversary documentary has like 2 championships in it already. It's insane. And we were talking about it, that window. We kept hearing for years they were building to the future. They were building to the future. We're not ready to move and get aggressive yet. We still think we got to build more. It was like, we heard that for years and years and years. And Ron Francis, the GM at the time, after Jim Rutherford left and Ron Francis assumed that role as GM, it was just nonsense. It was nonsensical the amount of time it took to get this team back to a postseason spot when you consider the fact they're taking 8 teams in each conference, and they couldn't figure out a way to put it together. All the heroes were gone. The Brindamores had retired, and now we're coaching. Eric Cole, Ray Whitney, Nick Wallin, Kevin Adams, Mike Commodore. Those guys were all gone. Then the next group of guys, and obviously Eric Stahl was in that mix there. Cam Ward. Those guys stuck it out through most of the dark ages, and then they get traded off or moved off. Jeff Skinner, we thought he was going to be the franchise savior. He, plays a string out for most of that 10-year run, then gets traded to Buffalo. We think we've made a mistake. And then the group of guys, the crop that comes in after that is the very foundation for what we have here in 2026. I'm talking about the deal to get Jordan Stahl from the Penguins. I'm talking, the creation, the molding of guys like Sebastian Aho, my guy, Jacob Slavin, homegrown guy. And then, you can start to look down the list of guys that didn't make it to the big dance. You got Teuvo Teravainen. You've got Brett Pesce. You've got numerous names, but then you get Svechnikov in there. You start to find an identity around these guys. You make a postseason in 2019 because you hire the right man for the job. The man that has meant more to this franchise than any one player has meant to any other franchise in the United States. And yes, I am not using hyperbole there. Rod Brindamore, as the captain of the Hurricanes, as a player, and now as a head coach, has meant more to that organization than any one player has ever meant to an organization. It would be like if Tom Brady was the Patriots' Super Bowl winning quarterback, and then he became Bill Belichick. It's just not a thing. But to go from a franchise that really only had a handful of playoff appearances as a franchise, goes 10 years without making one, and then the one move you go ahead and make on the front office side is to promote him to head coach. He had been on these staffs under Paul Maurice, Kirk Muller. He'd been stuck around through, I think, the Bill Peters era as well, and he finally gets the nod. And he finally gets the nod to be the head coach. And they've not missed the playoffs since. And there were a lot of trials and tribulations in there. There were guys that we, didn't make it to the big dance that we had to trade or lose, like the Brock McGinns of the world, Warren Fogels of the world, the Jesper Foss of the world. You could go Brady Shea. You could go Dougie Hamilton. You could look at all these names, and I know I'm leaving a lot out, but then you get some of the other younger guys to inject some of that talent in there. Seth Jarvis. They're not here without Seth Jarvis. They're not here without, the deal gone awry, the Mikko Rantanen deal. We all thought the Mikko Rantanen deal was going to put the Canes over the top. It was remarkable. Trading Marty Necas out to Colorado, getting, one of the greatest scorers in the league at the time. That was on our minds. It was a mind-boggling thing because we had seen a deal with Jake Gensel go, and we thought, that's close. But Mikko's a better scorer than Jake Gensel. And he decided to just completely half-skate, not try, and beg to be out of here. And that's when everybody started to go, maybe this isn't going to work. And I'm talking about the people that are on the fringes of appreciating what they had built in Carolina from the national media perspective. If you were a fan, you still knew this team was talented. You still knew they were close. But the national media, the ones that get it at the national level, and there's not a lot of them. We'll talk about them in a minute. And if you're just wondering, there are other topics we're going to get to in this show, but much like my Red Sox rant from like a month ago, you're just going to have to bear with me because this is a lot that I have to cover quickly. That deal goes sideways. People are like, is this a sign that nobody wants to play for Rod Brindamore? Is it too demanding? And they make a deal with the Dallas Stars, ship him off there, and they return a guy in Logan Stankoven, who I am proud to say we do not win this cup without a guy like Logan Stankoven. And in another trade, they get Taylor Hall from the New Jersey Devils. We don't win this cup if Taylor Hall is not on this team. And Jackson Blake, that line, the junkyard dogs, as they've been come to known, the Blake, Stankoven, Hall line, that line is one of the most important lines in Hurricanes history. I'm dead serious. It's right up there with the Battaglia, Brindamore, Cole line of the 2002 team, or any of those great lines with Eric Stahl and Jussi Jokinen. I mean, you could go up and down the list of the history of this franchise, and that one's got to be at the near top of it because it was at the top of the league by the end of the regular season, and what they did in the playoffs was remarkable. So you add those guys into the mix, and then in the offseason, because you have the money, that you're not worried about Mikko anymore, you can go get Keandre Miller from the Rangers, who I said was even more of an important get than Nikolai Ehlers. Ehlers turned out to be exactly what we could have ever hoped for. A big-time scoring presence, a free agent that was willing to come here and show just how good he could be. He wanted to change his scenery. He had run it dry up there in Winnipeg. He comes here. He's immediately what we need him to be. And in the Stanley Cup Finals, he's scoring in the first 25 seconds of the game. That's what we had been looking for. As fans, as a team, we needed a guy that could just go out there and put up the big number points and do that. But Keandre Miller was another stabilizing defensive voice behind a guy like Slavin, who could also contribute in the offensive end. And then a guy like Shane Gostisbehere, who had been here before, came back because he liked being here. He wanted to come back and get it done here. He came back. The first time around, they bring Shane Gostisbehere in as a defenseman. He's an offensive weapon, on the defensive side. Not thrilling defensively, but this time around, he is as important a part of that defense as anybody in this cup run. And that's remarkable because considering the style of game he played. So all these things have to come together. And it took years to do it. And people were like, should they blow it up? Should they start over? I worried about it for years, and I worried about the goaltending. And I was critical of guys in the past that we've had in the net. And Freddie Anderson, throughout this season and in this postseason, changed the narrative for me in a lot of ways and ultimately didn't get the finish to the finals that he had earned based off of how he had played. I mean, he had played himself into Conn Smythe contention in the postseason for how good he was up to the Stanley Cup. And Brandon Bussi, who was a toss-away cast-off from the Boston Bruins. Make no mistake, the Bruins fumbled Brandon Bussi. And at 27 years old, I don't think too many people were really poking fun at that from the Bruins' perspective. But he turned out to be a godsend to this franchise as far as the struggles that this team has had goaltending-wise for years. So you now have more than one option. And in the Stanley Cup final, they used both. They needed both. And when Brandon Bussi came in, it changed the series for the Carolina Hurricanes. The Vegas Golden Knights may have had an answer for Freddie Anderson at points. They did not have an answer. They did not solve the Rubik's Cube, which was Brandon Bussi. And it completely changed the momentum of a series. They were leading the series. By the time Brandon Bussi gets in there, they make an incredible rally in Game 3 that the likes of which I have never seen. I don't know how I didn't wake up everybody on the island of St. Thomas when this was happening, because I was losing my ever-loving mind the way they were scoring goals in that game to come all the way back and ultimately lose that game in overtime. But that wasn't the point of the story. The point of that story was they came all the way back. Brandon Bussi looked really good. And Brandon Bussi looked good during the regular season and then hit like a wall. And we were like, is it broke? What's the deal here? Did it all fall apart for the guy? And the fact of the matter is no. But it did need Freddie Anderson to stabilize things till Brandon got back in there. And he was ready to go, and he came ready to play. And in games 5 and 6, I mean, you cannot overstate just how important he was to this team's success. But none on the ice, with all due respect, and I'll sit there, and by the way, there are parts of the fan base that were calling out Jacob Slavin and some of the other guys for not producing or not playing their best hockey. Like, Jacob Slavin hasn't been trying to carry a defensive unit for what feels like 10 years at this point, and having played like an octopus, an extension of the goaltender all those times to make up for the fact that they didn't always have it in goaltending or defense. Like, give him a break. Now, Aho, it was a little bit more touch and go for a while there, but he ultimately rose to the occasion late in that series as well, as did Andrei Svechnikov, as did Seth Jarvis. All the pieces eventually got to where they needed to be, but I'll tell you what really turned the tide. It was the captain, and that's Jordan Staal. And Jordan Staal, if you're like me and you grew up with the Eric Staal-led Hurricanes, when Jordan came in, it was so cool to see him play with his brother for a limited period of time there. But you wondered exactly what Jordan's role was going to be. Eventually, he assumes the captaincy when Justin Williams gives up the letter C and departs the league after what he did. And again, he's a huge part of the building of this team. So I hate that he was there in Vegas, at least from what I saw, because he played a part in this being here, just like Don Waddell did on the GM side of things, and he's not here. And there's so many names that I could go through that were a part of this journey to get to this cup that I feel bad didn't get to make it to the dance because they made such an impact on the franchise. But this guy had been here. He had ridden it out. He had been here in the beginning or in the middle of the dark ages, saw the team come back up, and you kind of always knew what you were going to get with Jordan after a while. He was, a middle line center, basically, wasn't going to be a huge high volume scorer, but he kind of filled a role, not to sound cliche, that by the end there, he played a lot of Rod's game. When Rod was a center, it was more, a real tough defensive forward, great on the forecheck, great at getting real physical, really doing the things down low, but could score, could do the net front presence stuff you needed. He did all those things really well. But what I can't overlook now is the leadership and the intensity in which he played this. He was not losing this Stanley Cup. And scoring in those first 5 games at the clip he did, no one saw coming. Even the most ardent, loving Canes fan in the world did not see that performance coming from Jordan Staal, myself included. But it made me go, it had to be him. It had to be him. Like, yes, it needed to be Jarvis. It needed to be Svech. It needed to be Aho. It needed to be all those guys. But it needed to be Jordan. Jordan had helped drag this franchise back up the mountain, and to have him get his flowers, win the Conn Smythe Trophy, it just brought it all back full circle, and it was beautiful. He broke his own brother's record from longest time between cup victories, from winning with the Penguins in 2009 to this one in 2026. I mean, I could go down here and sing the praises of a guy like Jacob Slavin getting a cup. Jacob Slavin has been my favorite Hurricane basically from the time he came into the league. I was obsessed with the guy. I could see what he was. He was just an incredible all-around defender. He was an extension of the goaltender. He could do things. He could shut down games. He could neutralize an opponent. He doesn't play a flashy game. But if you're watching the game of hockey, you know how good Jacob Slavin is. And why I was so happy that he won gold in the Olympics with Team USA. And the fact that he got to do that and win a cup, I mean, it's one of the greatest runs any player's had as far as like accomplishments. Like, you can go back to Morrow and what he did with the Islanders and winning gold all those years ago. But really, Jacob Slavin deserves all the flowers because this guy was an anchor, a pillar of the franchise, deservedly wearing that that alternate captain logo. And I said, if Jordan Staal ever left, that's the guy you name as captain, because he's the locked-in presence, calm hand. That's what that's what Jacob Slavin is. He is consistently there. He is dependable. He does what he needs to do, and he locks it down. And I mean, there's so many names I could continue to rattle off about this team, but the fact that they got it done, I didn't allow myself to feel the kind of relief that you have, even in that final minute, because I knew I respected what Vegas does. This is not going to be me trashing Vegas. Vegas is a phenomenally run organization. They have exceeded all expectations since they've come into the league. And again, this is me being a fan of a team after being a fan of a Bill Belichick coach team. I have learned over the years that, save for a couple rivals in each and every sport, you don't overlook any opponent. And the Hurricanes went 16-3 to win this cup. They lost one game in the postseason before the Stanley Cup final. And I still refuse to look past Ottawa or Philadelphia. I wouldn't do it. And then Montreal, I had the least knowledge about coming into that Eastern Conference final, and they win game 1, and we're like, whoa, Is it starting over again? Because we'd seen years of heartbreak in the postseason, especially in the Eastern Conference Final. Whether you go back to 2019 against Boston, whether you want to go against the Tampa series or the Rangers or the Panthers, there were so many heartbreaks along the way. And God knows the heartbreaks in the postseason are still way better than not making the postseason. Anyone tells you otherwise is just not paying attention. Making the postseason and losing, while tough, means that they're trying and they're making a trend in the right direction. When you were watching the Hurricanes in 2014, 15, when nobody was showing up, you were still getting gouged on prices for parking. You had to watch guys that weren't here, had no identity to this team. I mean, I'll take the years of heartache to get to this point. It made it worth it. It made it so much sweeter. And it's that these group of guys, they didn't blow it up. And Eric Tulsky, the man who comes in after Don Waddell, was promoted from within the organization. The guy's a scientist, for God's sakes. And he kept right on with the philosophy from what we saw from Waddell. And he pushed the right buttons, even when things didn't look like they were pushed right. They ultimately won the Mikko Rantanen trade. Who thought that was possible? They thought that was going to be the laughing stock of the league. Meanwhile, Mikko Rantanen's been fine in Dallas, but didn't solve their problems. They're still stuck in the same kind of holding pattern that the Canes have been in. They can get close, but they can't get over the hump. So, to bring it all back, 20 years ago, when the Hurricanes won a cup in 2006, they justified hockey, professional hockey, existing in the Southeast, particularly in Raleigh, North Carolina. Non-traditional hockey market. A lot of teams in the Southeast have won since and prior between Tampa and Florida and all they've done in respective years. But 20 years later, the Carolina Hurricanes winning this cup justified Rod Brindamore's vision, Don Waddell / Eric Tulsky's vision, and it ultimately justified the work that guys like Jordan Staal, Sebastian Aho, Jacob Slavin, and so many others that had stuck it out, had been here, did not leave. It justified their mission, their plan to get it done. And as a fan of this franchise for over 20 years, all I can say is thanks. It was phenomenal. Oh, okay. Hard to move on, but again, is what it is. This is something I will never forget. I didn't even go to that game, and my friends brought it back. I got so many towels over there. I'm going to put together a collage of towels at some point from all the games that I have been to. On the other side, you have the New York Knicks breaking an even longer title streak, or a titleless streak, I should say. They defeated the San Antonio Spurs in really interesting games, competitive games. The Spurs did give a couple away in this series, much to the dismay of people like myself who thought the Spurs were going to win this series coming into it. I didn't think there was going to be a solution for Victor Wembanyama. I was wrong. The depth of the Knicks was stronger than the depth of the Spurs. And I think the Spurs are fine. They'll be fine. They will be better. They're a young team. But the credit goes to the New York Knicks for not blinking in the face of this. They didn't blink in the postseason. I mean, where I started to really take the Knicks seriously is when they handed Boston their ass. And as a guy that grew up a Celtics guy, I was watching that series thinking, the Celtics have this. I've watched years of Knicks basketball where the Celtics hand the Knicks their ass. You go back to the Carmelo Anthony days and whatnot. I know what to expect. It was a complete and utter culture shock when they flipped it on its head and they took it to Boston. But then they just roll through everybody. Dominating the Cavs the way they did was the real wake-up call to me going, oh, they might be for real this time. Because in the years past, you run into teams like the Pacers or somebody else and Halliburton goes crazy. There was no obstacle they were not going to overcome. I don't know why when I record these podcasts, I have to fucking scratch my nose. In credit where credit's due, Jalen Brunson etched his name as a Knicks legend for what he did. Karl Anthony Towns, OG Anunoby, you could go down the list of guys. they've etched their names into a very small group of players. And I love that Jalen Brunson's dad was still like, Patrick Ewing's the greatest Knick of all time. I'm like, I get it. But that was, I have made a long history of not being a New York sport anything fan. But you got to give credit where credit's due. The Knicks played an incredible NBA postseason, and they played an incredible NBA Finals. I think the Spurs will be fine, but I think the fact that the Knicks won is great for the league. I think it's great for the sport. I don't really like giving New York fans anything because I don't think they deserve any of it. I think for years and years and years they rode the coattails of all this stuff, and the fact that they went on a championship drought after the Giants' last title has given me nothing but endless pleasure. But if there was going to be a team to do it, the Knicks or the Mets would have been fine, in my opinion. It's like, okay, whatever, throw them a bone. As long as the Yankees, the Giants, the Jets, they're all still miserable. That's all I need. And again, the Yankees aren't bad, but still no chip. Still no chip. But it brought up an interesting hypothetical question that I've spent some time mulling over, which is the longest gap now for guys or teams that haven't won a championship in their respective sports. And just going down the immediate names, in hockey, you can go to any team in Canada, basically, because the fact that the Canadian teams have been shut out of the championship for years now, and they've had opportunities. Montreal had gone a couple times, but the fact, number one answer that comes up when you talk about not winning a championship, the drought, is Toronto in hockey. You can look at Montreal, the gap there. I mean, the trick is you had to have won one in the first place, because people go, the Detroit Lions and the pro football and the Brown, they've never won. You have to go back to NFL championships, and we don't even really bother to count those. Whether we should or we shouldn't is another argument. But you have to go to teams in these respective sports that have won, and the gap has existed since. So Montreal, Toronto. You can look at the Islanders. You can look at Edmonton. You can look at the Philadelphia Flyers. You can look at the Calgary Flames. You can look at any of those Canadian teams. You can look at the Flyers. You can look at the Islanders. You can look at Montreal. I already mentioned Montreal, but talking about teams that have won and the gap has become so sizable. And if you have your answers to this, I'd love to hear them in the comments below. Give me your teams, the longest gaps that you think it's now the standard, because the Knicks were the standard answer for a long time with the NBA. Sticking with the topic, you go to the NBA. You got the 76ers now. That's a big gap. You have the Bulls. I know that's crazy considering how many they won, but they're one of the iconic franchises, and that also plays a factor in it. The more iconic the franchise, the longer and more noticeable the gap between championships becomes. The Rockets, the Hawks, you can throw names like that out there that have won a title as a franchise and haven't won or even really sniffed one in a while. In the NFL, it's pretty simple. This is actually the easiest. You got the Bears. They're banking off a one Super Bowl. The 85 Bears. No team in any one city has gotten more mileage than the 85 Bears. I'm dead serious. No team has ever gone further than winning one title with a really great group. Those Bears teams of the 80s were really good when Walter Payton was still playing and Mike Ditka was the coach and Buddy Ryan was the D coordinator. They were really good. But to only win one and still have the mileage on the tires to get that thing across, it's impressive, I suppose. Dallas, easy one. They act as if it was only 10 years ago they last won a Super Bowl. You have to go back to before I was on this planet to find a Super Bowl for the Dallas Cowboys. The Miami Dolphins haven't won a Super Bowl since the Nixon administration. The Raiders, in wherever city you choose to bank on, that's another one that's won a championship, and the gap has now become, since the early 80s, since the Reagan administration, they haven't won a title, and they haven't been particularly close since the loss to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers in the start of the 2000s. And then Washington, that's another one. Long gap since Mark Rippon was beating the Buffalo Bills in, I believe, 1991. Yeah, you got to go back a ways to find another, again, a franchise that has won a title, and now the gap is starting to really get noticeable. But Miami, Dallas, Chicago, you got those bases covered pretty well. And I know there are people that could point out other teams. And yes, preface it, this isn't teams that have never won. I'm looking at you, Detroit, Cleveland, Minnesota. You haven't, so you're not on this list. And then lastly, you go to Major League Baseball, and this one's harsh. This one is harsh. There's no way around it. Like the Cubs broke this. The Red Sox broke their streaks, but it left like the Cleveland Guardians. They came so damn close against the Cubs to breaking their humongous streak gap between titles. You look at the New York Mets, again, 2 titles, last one coming in 86. Gap keeps getting larger and larger. They've been to 1 since then. Or 2 since then, the 2000 series and then against the Royals. So that's 2. But again, getting there and getting close also helps to add to the agony. You look at the Pittsburgh Pirates, haven't won a title since Willie Stargell and the boys in the late 70s there. The Baltimore Orioles, the team they beat to win championships in the 70s. The Oakland Athletics, as I refuse to acknowledge the fact that they stole that franchise. The Athletics have not winning since the late 80s. That's another one in the arc there of big gaps in the window, so to speak. And I mean, you can sit there and try to think it out a little bit more, but I think those are really the big names to hit in these respective sports. And the gap starts to get more noticeable. Like 20 years isn't a huge gap for the Hurricanes. And the fact that they've went to 3 cups in basically 24, 25 years is not bad. The intermittent, the period in between, that's a bit awful, but it's still something to be proud of. Speaking of no championships, Denny Hamlin continues to rack up wins this NASCAR season, and it has become a quickly 2-horse race at the top of the sport right now between Denny Hamlin and his team driver, Tyler Reddick, driver for 2311 Racing in the 45 car, who works for Denny Hamlin, if you didn't already figure that out from the way I was talking about it. Those 2 guys battling it out at the top of the leaderboard each and every week, racking up wins. Like Reddick started as hot a season as any driver as I've seen in my lifetime. No kidding. And then Denny Hamlin comes back with his own, turn of just dominance. And Toyota as a whole has had NASCAR in a vice. Put him in a vice this season. I mean, Chevy they're kind of lying in the weeds. They've gotten some wins with, Carson Hocevar, Chase Elliott. They've got their wins. But Ford, good God. If Ryan Blaney wasn't a Ford driver, dear God, I don't think they'd have 50 laps led in the last, 5 races. I mean, they're not on the struggle bus. The struggle bus broke down. All 4 tires are flat, and they're flagging down the AAA vehicle. That's what's happening with Ford right now. But, I mean, this is... In the first year since we moved away from a NASCAR playoff, the fact that so many people clamored for a season-long points championship, it is unfortunate because they were never going to do that. But this would have at least given you a compelling story because a lot of times a season-long championship in racing stinks. But the chase, which is a happy compromise, as we talked about all those podcasts ago, it was as good a compromise as you were going to get for a season-long decider of the championship. You get the regular season, you get the chase, you will crown a proper champion. There's not fluke champions really with the chase. There just wasn't. But Denny Hamlin and Tyler Reddick quickly establishing themselves in the pack. At the beginning of the year, I said Christopher Bell would be right here in this mix. I just picked the wrong Toyota, apparently, because that team has struggled, but has started to find their footing here recently. I'm amazed because we keep hearing Denny Hamlin kind of tease the idea of wanting to step away and retire and go be the master team owner extraordinaire that, he's seen Joe Gibbs and Rick Hendrick and Roger Penske all be for these years. But if you're winning the way he's winning, why would you stop? I've made it no mistake over the years that I've never rooted for Denny. Obviously sympathized with the absolute tragedy he went through this year. But from a narrative perspective, how could this not be a bigger nightmare doomsday scenario if you are a Denny bro, that Tyler Reddick, the man driving for Denny Hamlin and Michael Jordan, would be the one to steal a championship away from Denny? I mean, Denny's gotten so damn close all these many times, and now it's like you think he's got the form again to do it? You keep hearing about him rumbling about retiring in the next year or two. Like, Tyler Reddick, that might be enough. That might be the straw that breaks the camel's back, and he just goes, I've had enough. Like, I'm Carl Edwards at this point. I can't do it. It is what it is. But, I mean, those Toyotas just look damn good, man. There's no way around it. We got more doomsday college football talk, and I don't really know that I have the energy for it. I was feeling good today. And then, we got through the Brendan Sorsby lawsuit, the litigation. He won his appeal with the gambling, won eligibility, and then opted to just dip into the supplemental draft. And all the Big Ten teams said they weren't going to schedule Texas Tech. And I've said for a while that there's no guardrails. We're rolling off the cliff. The car we're not even halfway down the mountain yet. We're tumbling and tumbling and tumbling and tumbling. It's like a Top Gear stunt gone awry. We just keep tumbling. And then the Big Ten and the SEC put out a big joint release today that if you were like me and have been following this and saying it over and over on this show, the doomsday is coming. The Super League is coming. If we don't throw all our collective bodies in the way of it, that joint press release, which you can see here, that screamed like a partnership that will eventually devolve into a Super League. And everybody's going to get left out in the cold. And people need to understand something. Me pushing back on not wanting the Super League is not me not pushing back against the NCAA and how bad they've mismanaged everything from spending to the way we handle all the conference realignment to all these different, to the way we pay players, to the way we, NIL, everything. The gambling aspect, all of it's been handled awfully. But I'm saying inmates running the asylum is not the solution. Having people like Greg Sankey running a sport is not a solution. That's a doomsday scenario. Having the commissioners of the Big Ten and the SEC controlling college football when they blow the sport up in a couple years completely is not a better alternative. I want to fix an alternative now so we don't get to that spot. But we can't seem to figure that out because nobody will pull their head out of their ass in this sport. And I'm fed up with it. I've said it for a while now. I'm tired of it. If you root for anybody that isn't in the SEC, Big 10, Big 12, or ACC, you're completely screwed if this happens the way it is. It's done. Your programs will die. They will not be able to financially compete if they shut everybody out of all the major bowls, all the championships, all that. They kick it to a D2 or a D3 level. You might as well quit. I've said that ad nauseum. I will not give up. I will not be the one to break. I will be the wall of their progress of the Super League. I will push back. And if more people were smart, they would do the same. But it does not let the NCAA off the hook. It does not. They are fundamentally ruining it, and they don't realize how screwed they're going to be in a minute. It's going to happen, and I'm going to be right, and I'm going to hate myself for being right. I mean, I said it a couple weeks ago when Kirby Smart made his comments. We'll go play by ourselves. We don't care. Yeah, we know you don't care. You know you don't care about anybody else, and that's the problem. All right, well, I went from really excited, happy, the Hurricanes won a championship to pain. So there's no logical end in sight for any of this, but it's coming. And the Sorsby thing, we cannot have players gambling on games in their respective sport, in any sport. It can't happen. It can't happen. And it can't just be that you can keep appealing to whatever judge you will find that will eventually turn over these things. And that goes for eligibility. That goes for, for gambling rules. And we have to have an adult in the room, and we don't have an adult in the room. We have a bunch of petulant children running the sport, who some of them may be 75, but God knows they have the brain of a 12-year-old. Ooh, pretty shiny. Ah, okay, we get it. You're a genius. Go cash the money and forget about the fire and destruction you're leaving in a path behind you. Last up, we've got another power ranking segment. I'm having a lot of fun with these power ranking segments. Last week, or 2 weeks ago, the last time you saw a live show and we posted it separate, you had the top 10 movies of the 2010s. We're going to bring you more of those decades. I've got them all on my Letterboxd. If you haven't got on Letterboxd, you can look at my Letterboxd for and all my lists that I post up there. We've got some other projects coming, both on the music and the movie front. We're going to be releasing some stuff here on the channel as well as on some other platforms, as well as TikTok and other things as well. We appreciate the audience we've been able to build. We hit 100 subscribers on this channel, so thank you. Please continue to tell your friends, family, and loved ones to follow this channel. It helps. It really helps. I used to watch those videos and people go, subscribe to help the channel thrive and all that shit. And I go, okay, all right. Yeah, we got it. We get it. And they had like 800 million subscribers. I'm like, I think you're doing fine. But if you don't have hundreds of thousands of subscribers, you're basically a nobody on here. And frankly, that's where we're at right now. But to the 100 of you, 109, I believe, God bless you. Thank you. Please continue to subscribe. Continue to tell people. That's the way this works. Because we love doing what we're doing here. This is a lot of fun for me. This is not work. And I apologize for not having you an episode ready last week. I just did not have my stuff together to do it. We're going to try to do a live show on Friday last week. Didn't work. It was a chaotic situation. Getting back into the, all that. But we do have another power rankings here tonight, and we've got the top 10 albums from probably, if I had to rank it, they're probably my second favorite band of all time. Because Kiss, as we already saw, probably my favorite band of all time. And I don't like to power rank my favorite bands because that's just, I'll never do that. It's tough. Because like I go in kicks and turns, and then there's solo artists that I'm obsessed with, and it's like, how do you rank that? I don't know. But the discographies of these bands, this one's right at the top as far as what I've played, and it is Van Halen. And obviously, they're back in the news as Alex Van Halen. We talked about it a couple of months ago. They're trying to put together pieces of like a collection of music that Eddie Alex had left behind and demos and other things, and I'm really interested to see where they get to with that. I'm excited for that project. I hope it comes to fruition. I know Steve Lukather of Toto's working on it. He's been a longtime friend of the family there, and he's doing a great job with the Van Halens to put this together. And it's ultimately the legacy that you want to see something like that, because when Eddie passed away, there was so much infighting and debate over what was going to happen. There was trying to get a reunion together with all the singers and all those things. It was trying to come to fruition, and Eddie just ran out of time. And I think it would have gotten a really beautiful ending had time not been taken from him when he passed away in 2020. But, like, the music lives on. It really does. And the Van Halen catalog, I came to appreciate it even more because as a kid, I was a Dave guy. I'm probably always going to be a Dave guy. There's a little bit of David Lee Roth in all of us as far as the personality. Like, yes, is he over the top? Is he a little much? Can he sing anymore? Like, I'm not going to do any of that stuff. But Diamond Dave, he's the showman extraordinaire. Probably in the echelon, maybe greatest frontman of all time. But as a kid, I didn't appreciate the Sammy years. And as I get a bit older, and as my dad pointed out to me, you'll get to an age where you do appreciate the Sammy Hagar discography. I already liked Sammy solo. I just didn't love the sentiment of some of the tenor of those songs that happened in the mid to late 80s. It was a little bit more indicative of the time. It's a little more lovey-dovey. When you're a high school teenager, you're like, I'm angry. I want to, you know, I want the hard, gritty rock and roll, the metal, all this, the listening to Iron Maiden in the parking lot. Like, that's kind of where I was. But the older I get and the more I play and the more I listen, I've come to love so much more of the discography for Sammy Hagar's era. And I even like part of Van Halen 3 with Gary Cherone. I do. I know that's crazy, but I do. So we had to make the ranking here. And again, the funny part about these is you can't do these for every band because they don't have 10 albums worth of rankable material. Some have more than 10, and none of them are good enough to make a top 10. It's just the way it is. But Van Halen, they've got a solid top 10, and we're going to rank them. We're going to start at number 10. Number 10 on the Van Halen Power Rankings top 10 albums, it is the second of the Sammy Hagar era records. It is OU812. This was a kind of a late discovery for me. Produced by, one of the records produced by Don Landy, who is a big figure in the Van Halen lore as the engineer that helped design 5150 Studios, was the engineer on almost all the Dave records, I think all the Dave records, and then gets to produce 5150. You know, he's a part of this record as well. And this one was more of a slow burn for me. And what ultimately kicked it into a gear for me is the guitar tone by Eddie on a couple of these tracks in particular, that it just sounds so distinct from what he had done. You've got tracks on here like When It's Love, one of the big single hits. You got Cabo Wabo. You've got Finish What You Started, which is like, I think, the first song I ever heard off this album. And I liked it. It's got that kind of country and Western twang, bump to it. But the tracks that really took this album over the top for me and started to really appreciate the album were Source of Infection, AFU, Naturally Wired is probably my favorite track on the album. Mine All Mine. I mean, those are the ones that really started to put Black and Blue. That's another one. Put this album together for me. And it's a cool cover, ripping off the Beatles, and you got the OU812. It's a fun gag, and like I said, it has become one I've come to appreciate in more recent years, more than even so as a kid. Number 9, I don't have on vinyl. It is the last Van Halen record ever put out. It is a Different Kind of Truth. Basically, it's the one record with Wolfgang Van Halen on bass, and Wolfie deserves a huge round of applause. He's a phenomenal musician, and Mammoth has been so great a project to follow, and I love the records he's put out. But he drove the bus on this one. I think David Lee Roth recommended the producer Mike Shanks to produce the record, but it was really Wolfie going through the catalog of demos and going, guys, there's stuff here. We can go ahead and record some of this stuff, and it would be great to modernize some of it. And I know the first single wasn't for everybody's taste. I love Tattoo. Tattoo is great. I love Chinatown. I love, the example of where this album comes from is She's the Woman, which dates back to the original 78 demo I believe Gene Simmons worked on. So A Different Kind of Truth is great, and it's deeper than you think it is. And there's a lot of really great playing between Eddie and interlude between him and Wolfie. Dave's great. He's got that signature growl, yarl, scream thing, the wow kind of thing he's got going on. And it's in Stay Frosty, which I love, which is an obvious callback to Ice Cream Man. And then I think probably my underrated favorite track on the album is a track called You and Your Blues. That is a great. It's got all the old references to all the great blues tracks of the past and rock and whatnot. It's a fun rocker with a cool solo, and it's great. I think Eddie's guitar tone is really fun on this album. You'll hear me use that a lot. Eddie is a roadmap of interesting guitar tone across his career. So it's always like getting a new flavor of ice cream. It's like, ooh, have you tried this flavor? It's Rocky, or I don't like Rocky Road. It's a cookie dough. And then here's Oreo Blue Monster cookie ice cream. And then we got chocolate over here, but we got vanilla. We've got mint chocolate chip pistachio would kill me, as I found out earlier or late last year. I'm pretty positive I'm definitely allergic to pistachios. So Not going to be making a pistachio ice cream reference. Not on my show, I'm not. But Different Kind of Truth deserves a lot more credit than it gets. Number 8, it is, if I pull this correct, I think I did, 5150. This was dangerously close to being my favorite of the Sammy Hagar era records. And again, I think some of the greatest guitar tone that Eddie ever put down is on this album. That's not hyperbole. Again, co-produced by Mick Jones of Foreigner and Don Landy. This album has a really unique sound to it. You see the presence there. The song, the hits. I'm not as worried about some of the hits, like Why Can't This Be Love, Dreams. Those were the ones that turned me off to the record when I was younger. I appreciate them for what they are. They're good songs. I didn't love them as a kid, though. I loved Best of Both Worlds. The guitar tone, the solo. Oh, it's perfect. 5150. Summer Nights. That's the stuff that puts this album dangerously close to unseating the other Sammy Hagar record in my power ranking. It sits at 8, and that sounds unfortunate, but you're talking about the collection of the records between Dave and Sammy. Most people just do one Sammy list, one Dave list. I ain't doing that. This is the top 10 of the entire catalog. We could have put the Sharon record on here, but let's be honest, it wasn't making this list. Number 7. It is the much maligned, but still loved, lowest rated of the Dave era records. It is Diver Down. Weirdly always love this cover, as simplistic as it is. I always kind of like the name and the idea of it. Look, the knock on this record is they were rushed into the studio because the single Oh Pretty Woman started to do numbers. And they had to go put a record around it so they could, they weren't ready to do it. And this is truly where the frustration for Eddie became immense. As a creative force, he felt so restricted by this, felt annoyed by the presence of having to do all these covers. And they did some phenomenal covers. I mean, Oh Pretty Woman is as good, is as good, if not better, than the original, with all due respect to Roy Orbison. That's how damn good they did it. And I mean, you can go down the list. You've got Dancing in the Street there. You've got Hang 'Em High. You've got Little Guitars. There's some great stuff on Where Have All the Good Times Gone? I mean, there's some great stuff on here, but Eddie's frustration came from the idea that there's just too many covers on this. And I understand it. But the music's still strong. The instrumentation put around it, the ideas that they put around some of these, songs that were known. And Van Halen has a great history with covers. We'll get to it a little later, but they have done some phenomenal covers in their day, and there's phenomenal covers on this record. But Eddie, as a creative force, wanted to be known for the stuff he wrote, not somebody else. And that's ultimately why this one is as low as it is. But it's still great. There's great bits of work here. Intruder, by the way, the intro to Oh Pretty Woman, played on a Schlitz beer can with across the neck. Eddie Van Halen used a Schlitz beer can. And I think Schlitz just closed up shop this year. So Eddie Van Halen utilizing a beer can to make all those crazy sounds you hear on Intruder. And I've always loved Intruder for that weird reason too. So it's great. It's a lot of fun. Number 6. It is an album I don't actually own on vinyl, but it is my favorite of the Sammy Hagar era records. It is For Unlawful Carnal Knowledge. You can spell that one out and figure it for yourself. It is the reunion of Ted Templeman, the longtime producer of the first Dave records. He chose Dave in the divorce. When Van Halen and David Lee Roth broke up in 1985, he went and produced Crazy from the Heat, went and produced the first Dave solo records on his own. And Van Halen went their own direction, but they bring him back here in 91 along with Andy Johns, one of the two iconic Johns brothers who are both engineer and producing legends in England. This is a breakaway from the classic tone that we had heard from Eddie for years. He was, the original Marshall that is on those iconic records is starting to fade at this point. I read that he had to start moving away from it. And you start to hear a sonic change in the band, but it's a phenomenal one, aided by some incredible songs like Run Around, Top of the World, which dates back to 83 to when they were recording Jump. You've got my personal favorite on the record, which is Judgment Day. And I mean, Pound Cake, instantly iconic. I've heard that song on the radio all my life with the drill and everything. It's great. There's the great instrumental on there, 316, which is obviously a nod to Wolfie. And I believe Wolfie played it at his wedding as a way to keep his father a part of the ceremony after he had passed when Wolfie got married. So it's a powerful song. Right Now is probably the song you remember the most off this album. That video did numbers after Van Halen. They did the classic 80s videos and whatnot with Dave, but that one was powerful for another set of reasons. And I believe it won an award at the MTV Music Awards for just the concept of it. It was really great. But there's so much good stuff on this album, and it rivals, like I said, it's higher than 2 Dave records on here for me, and it continues to grow in lore as I get older. I just love it more and more each year. And it could easily have unseated this one at number 5, but number 5 stuck it out, and I actually do have it on vinyl, but I don't think I have it here in this apartment. It is Women and Children First. Women and Children First, number 5 is interesting for me because there are stuff I like more than the peaks of this album. But what Women and Children First has over the albums that we just ranked is it's deeper in some of the instances. Like, you have to go past, And the Cradle Will Rock is played out for me at this point. Everybody Wants Some, not so much. But the real gems are Romeo Delight, In a Simple Rhyme. You got to go through those tracks to find the real gems and the beauty of this record. I mean, Romeo Delight is maybe one of the most underrated Van Halen songs of all time. It opened the show at the US Festival. It opened the concerts for years. It's phenomenal. It's like a kick-ass way to open a concert. I don't know. I think they played it when I saw. So for context sake, I did get to see Van Halen once before Eddie passed away. And I saw the last tour they did. I think it was 2015, I want to say. And I believe they played it, and I'm marked out. I was like, oh my God! And I mean, Wolfie was picking the set list. I mean, they opened the show with Light Up the Sky. We'll talk about that later. Just a phenomenal song, and there's some good stuff on there outside of the ones I've already named. Take Your Whiskey Home is another great one. And that's ultimately what's... Are there songs that I like more on the albums before? Yes. But as a complete package, Women and Children First... It's hard to overcome just how good those first Van Halen records were, and you're going to see why, because here we go to number 4 on the list. An album that just screams summer at the beach party vibes. It is Van Halen 2. It's funny how an album can elicit a period of time in your life and a specific setting. When I think of this record, I think of being on the beach during the summer, beer in your hand. It's literally the lines to Beautiful Girls, beer in your hand, toes in the sand. It is a summer beach kind of record, but don't get it twisted. This thing's got some venom to it. I mean, it's got Somebody Get Me a Doctor, which was my ringtone for years. I'm not even kidding you. It was my ringtone. Love that ringtone. I don't know why I still don't have it. DOA. It's got Light Up the Sky, which, again, another category of underrated, incredible Van Halen songs. A great opener to the show that made me go back and appreciate just how good this is. And sonically, it's number 4 on the list, but God, does this record sound good. These Templeman records, Landy, Templeman, and the 4 original members of Van Halen in the recording sense, they had it all going in the right direction. I mean, it's remarkable. They have a cover on here of a Linda Ronstadt song, and it's phenomenal. You're No Good. That should not... it opens the record. It's one of the weirdest opens to a record, but it's awesome. Bottoms Up is great. Beautiful Girls is the hit that you know. Spanish Fly, an acoustic eruption, essentially. It's incredible. Women in Love, that's another personal favorite of mine. It's just... There's so much... This is like Krispy Kremes. These will never go out of style. They will taste great forever, and you love them. It doesn't matter if, other things come along in life. You still want the Krispy Kreme glazed donut. That's what the Van Halen David Lee Roth years are. They are so desirable. Number 3. Here we go. This is truly the hardest portion of this list for me, was deciding between number 3 and number 2. Because the record I'm about to show you was number 2 for the longest time, and threaten to be number one. But, and I don't know if it's just, it has more to do with number 2 than it has anything to do about number 3. Fair warning. This is, if I talked about it with Creatures of the Night on the KISS rankings, this is the serious Van Halen fan's favorite album. Like, if you want to prove just how badass a Van Halen fan you are, how cool you are for the room, this is your favorite. It is the most pissed off, venomous, angry, dark Van Halen record that ever lived. With the exception of parts of Van Halen 3. Or I guess Balance. But really, this is in a category of all to itself. And it, dare I say it, it's in my top 5, and it could threaten to be my favorite song of Van Halen. It is Mean Street. I love that song with the open all the way through. It's just, it's a shit kicker of a song, man. There's just no way around it. So this is Love, Center Swing, Unchained, Dirty Movies, Hear About It Later, Sunday Afternoon in the Park. You can go on. And this thing, it's just Eddie at his rawest, angriest. Like, you could tell that he was frustrated by the working relationship of Ted Templeman and David Lee Roth and not being able to convey the sounds he wanted. That's why he ultimately wound up, after 82, developing 5150 Studios. It was like, the thing that you come to learn about Eddie Van Halen is I don't know that he ever got to a point where he was satisfied. And for so many people that create stuff, you feel that kind of longing, that desire to achieve, to get somewhere. You're like, did I get it this time? No, maybe not, but it's closer. And as somebody who appreciates and loves Eddie Van Halen's, work, and Alex Van Halen's all over this thing. He's a monster. Alex doesn't get the credit he deserves. Alex is a virtuoso in his own right, and he's only overshadowed by having arguably one of the greatest guitarists to ever walk the face of the earth, possibly the greatest to ever walk the face of the earth, as his brother. But Alex is insane. He's a monster on the kit, and you can hear it on this album. And again, Dave and Michael Anthony, who hadn't even talked about Michael Anthony. The vocal sound of Van Halen, the chorus vocal in the choruses of these songs is so distinctive. No band really, like, you could talk about a handful of bands that nailed it. The Eagles, KISS had it to an extent. You had the Van Halen records. You can hear it even on some of the Aerosmith ones and the great backing vocals. Like, it's a part of the music you don't even appreciate. And Mikey's bass and vocals are in there. And David Lee Roth, his lyrics on this album in particular, they're particularly cutting. Like, listen to Mean Streets and tell me that's just not some really interesting lyrical content. It's all over this album. Dirty Movies. I mean, it's great. Like, there's so much on here that I could go on and on and on about. But we have to be done with this at some point. And this album that unseated this at number 2, and maybe it's a recency bias. You can see it already. It is 1984. So, why did this album jump to number 2 over Fair Warning? I would say the production and the sound quality has never been matched, with the exception of one other record, which you can probably guess because I haven't already said it. But sonically, this record is incredible. From the very open of 1984, the instrumental, into Jump. And I get it. Jump is a divisive topic in the Van Halen world. Like, it's the greatest guitar player of the 80s deciding to do something on the keyboards. And it doesn't even matter because he's phenomenal at it. But when I tell you that Panama might be the greatest rock riff of the 80s, I'm not kidding. I think it might you know what? No. I'm going to say it right now. Get ready. Sit down. Buckle up, kids. Panama, if I could write a song, I wish it could be 1/10 as cool as Panama. Panama is the greatest 80s guitar riff of all time. Of the entire decade. Fight me. It's perfect. Every bit of it. And it's perfect on this studio recording. I love it live, but nothing touches this in studio recording. You got Hot for Teacher on here. Top Jimmy. I spin Top Jimmy off this album probably more than the hits. I'll Wait is another great anthem that with a synthesizer. It doesn't even matter. House of Pain is on here. Girl Gone Bad. I mean, Drop Dead again. I listened to this more recently. This might be recency bias, but God, do I love this record. In Panama, like I said, Hot for Teacher, Jump. Any band would give their left arm for that. They give their left arm, their right arm, and maybe a bit of their head. Like, they would give whatever to have 3 songs that damn good. But you can probably figure it out. It doesn't take a rocket scientist to figure this one out. This is probably the only list, other than the Rolling Stones one, that couldn't be more obvious as to number 1. It is Van Halen 1. When I first heard this record, nothing I had ever heard sounded like this. And I'll tell you where and when, because I have the distinct memory, and most of my musical taste comes from my father. And I love, this is something he and I share. Because as a child, I would sit in the back seat of Dad's old Nissan Maximas, 2001 or 99, I can't remember at this point, Nissan Maxima. And we would listen to the radio station in Raleigh, and he would have his CDs in the car in the console. And I remember asking him, because it was Running with the Devil. I was like, and I didn't really know at that age. I was like 5 or 6 years old. I just remember this conversation. And I don't know if you can even remember a conversation at 5 or 6. I might be making this shit up. I have no idea. But I know I asked it at some point in my life. I just know I heard it and then had this conversation. Like, is this live? And he's like, no, it's a studio song. And I don't even think I realized what he meant by that. But nothing sounds sonically like this record. Nothing Van Halen did before, after. Nothing a band had done before or after this album sounds like this album. This is the atomic bomb going off for rock and roll. There was great stuff before it, but there's nothing that sounds like this record. Songwriting-wise, you're getting the hits of hits when you talk about it. It's a greatest hits album. You Really Got Me as a cover. It doesn't matter. It's better than the original. Yeah, I said it. Purists get mad at me. Running with the Devil. You open with that car horn. The thumping bass of Michael Anthony. The screeching vocals of David Lee Roth coming over top of Eddie's like guitar riff kicking in. The drums just thumping away like a beast from hell behind you. I cannot stress it enough how important this record is. Ain't Talking About Love is a punk, like a punk timing rock masterpiece that nobody saw coming. Little Dreamer proves that Eddie can slow it down and go toe-to-toe with anybody like that. Atomic Punk, a sonic slap to the face. On Fire, one of the original demos that just kicks ass on here as well. Ice Cream Man, a fun little ditty that Dave gets to strum away on the old acoustic with. It's fun. And then Eruption. The greatest guitar solo to ever live. Sorry. Well, I would actually say that I think if you're asking me gun to my head, greatest guitar solo ever recorded, now that's more of an instrumental piece, so I will excise that. But I will say I think Eddie does have the greatest guitar solo ever put down on record, which is Beat It. And you don't have to be a Michael Jackson fan or even an Eddie Van Halen fan to recognize just how damn good that solo is. And if I was a gun to my head, I love all these great guitar players, the Eric Claptons, the B.B. Kings, the, Richie Blackmores, the Billy Gibbons, Ace Frehleys, Jimmy Page. I could go on, Jeff Beck. That solo and Eruption is your life before and your life after. That's as simple as I can put it. So Van Halen 1 ranks at number 1, as if you had any guess as to what else it could possibly be. So there you go. Long show. Thank you guys for sticking around. We apologize for not having a show last week. You'll have this one on Friday. Canes are champions. Knicks are champions. Baseball is doing its thing. We'll get you more of an update on that next week. We ranked the power rankings of Van Halen's discography. We got plenty more power rankings to come. We're going to get movies in there. If you got topics you'd like to see me power rank, go drop them in the comments below. Let your friends know. Like, share, and subscribe. Thank you for another edition of the Collins Janus Show. The preceding episode was a production of Moonlight Media Works.